Does life have to be fair before you are happy? Today in Luke's Gospel, he uses a family story to really show us this conundrum. Does life have to be fair in order for us to be happy? He uses a family story because it's in our families, probably, that we first learned that life is not fair. So we have a young man. So Jesus is on the road to Jerusalem. We have a young man who shouts up from the crowd, "Jesus, help me. Get my brother to divide the inheritance and give me my fair share." And Jesus, as a rabbi, did have the power to arbitrate these kinds of situations. But Jesus said, "No, I'm not going to get into that mess." And Jesus warns him about not making life to mean about having possessions. And beware of greed. He could have really asked this question. Be mindful of possessions. Who is doing the possessing? Are you in possession of your possessions? Or do your possessions possess you? Let me tell you a parable. There was a farmer, and he had a bumper crop. Oh boy, so much grain. And he looked at all the grain, and he looked at his tiny little silos, and he thought, oh, well, what am I going to do? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear down my little silos, and I'm going to build big, fat ones. And he did. And he filled all his silos. There were so many, and they were so big. And when they were brimming, he said to himself, "Soul, look at all that you have. You probably have all the grain in this county. You can control the price of grain. There's no competition." Soul, with that kind of power and control, relax. Eat, drink, be merry. And in the middle of saying all this and looking at all that he had, he died. Let's unpack that a bit. Let's unpack this. There's a strange character in this parable. It's the language. Notice that the man who is the farmer is only talking to himself. What will I do with all my grain? Oh, I know what I will do. I will build bigger barns. I will put all my stuff in them. And then I say to myself, "Self, you got plenty here now. Safe and secure, power and control. Yes, self, eat, drink, and be merry." He is only talking to himself. And that is his poverty. Imagine him in his barn or on his property and mountains of grain behind him, and he's clutching it, clutching the grain. My grain, my He is like Midas, who upon getting the power to change everything into gold, everything he touched, and then finding he could touch no one, and no one could touch him. With all the wealth, he lived in isolation. So it is with our farmer, clutching his grain all by himself. When did his neighbors realize he had died? And Jesus says, be careful about possessions. Who is possessing whom? Do you possess the grain, or does the grain possess you? I'm on this road to Jerusalem, inaugurating the kingdom. I tell you, be concerned instead about kingdom treasure. Be rich toward God. Be rich toward God. What does it mean to be rich toward God? This is actually a saying. It meant think about someone else besides yourself. Think about your neighbor, your community, your family. So the first question upon this abundance, this bumper crop, would be the question, if one were rich toward God, how do I share? How do I share this? What does my community need? How can what I have gained be a blessing to those around me? That is what it means to be rich toward God. And when you are rich toward God, you are the agent. You do not get possessed by your possessions. You are now the one who has power over your possessions. So Jesus is going to do an extended treatment in this chapter 12 that we'll hear in the course of the next couple weeks. An extended treatment of wealth and our relationship to it, property, stuff. We all have a relationship to it. And Jesus is trying to turn our perspective to kingdom treasure. And in the end, he will summarize in a very famous saying, do not make for yourself purses that fail, but put your treasure where your heart is. So this I language in the parable is this turning inward of the self. That is actually one of the definitions of sin, the turning inward of the self. And it's such a simple thing, really, the language, turning outward of perspective, rich toward God. Because the question is, who is doing the possessing? So let's return to our young man who is seeking Jesus' help with this problem with his older brother. So his older brother has a lot of power. In Deuteronomy, we know that the oldest brother gets a double portion of the land, of all the property. He's grown up with this disparity, this injustice, as he might have perceived it. He's always going to get less because he's younger. Maybe he had resigned to this mathematics, okay, fine, but I'll get my little portion. But there's a little problem for him because there's also this statute, this legal statute, that if the land is not very big, the older brother can be given the power to retain the land intact. Because if you're farming, you need a certain acreage to make sustainable income. And if you cut into small parts and divvy it up, you're not going to make enough. So maybe his older brother saw that this land was just too small to be cut up anymore. And he has the legal ability to retain the land intact. And this bit of land that the younger brother had been dreaming of that would be his, that dream is dying. And he comes to Jesus and he's like, arbitrate for me. I've had this dream. I knew it wasn't going to be all, but I knew I would get my own share, and I have intentions. I have plans around this land. Give it to me. But the law isn't on his side. Jesus is not helping him. And he has to deal with the death of a dream. What will happen to this young man? He talks to Jesus. Jesus doesn't take his side. In fact, Jesus is insinuating that he is being greedy when all he wants is his fair share. What to do when life just doesn't go our way? Especially in the family. We all, I'm sure, have heard about how families can go into so much pain around stuff. But it doesn't even have to be about stuff, because the stuff represents dreams, right? Intentions, what we think we could become if we had this, what we think we want in life, because this is the plan. When I think about my own disappointments, the death of some dreams I never thought would ever die, I didn't know who I was going to be without that dream. Do our dreams possess us, or do we possess our dreams? Do our plans possess us, or do we possess our plans? That's the kingdom question. How do you move into your own agency toward God, who might not give you that dream, but always gives you enough? So I consider that where I have come in the death of dreams and plans and desires through a lot of prayer and a lot of time, because we actually do need time to be disappointed. It's okay to be in those places. But to fall on one's knees and pray to God, help me see. And what I have seen after all the pain and sorrowing is what remains. What remains with new eyes to see the abundance that is all around me. Friendships that come up that I didn't think were there. All this love in my favor. So This is the treasure that does not fail. It is friendship, love, community, relationships, that non-material thing that is building the kingdom. Those are the things that remain. That is the treasure in the heart. So I really believe that this young man is given an invitation by Jesus. I'm not going to arbitrate this for you. But that's not the end of the story for you. Have an open heart. And yes, one place caused pain, but don't let that pain tell you that life is not worth all the other treasures, and to keep your heart open, to continue to trust when trust is broken. Our parable ends with a memento mori. It's always good to have a memento mori. Every possession could be a memento mori, right? Physical death, death of the self, death of a dream. All this points to what God is pointing to. What lasts? What lasts? I've seen a lot of death. Lots of death. There's this joke that Xanda and I talk about, because when I came to St. Thomas and I became a priest, I was a hospital chaplain, and she said, "Why did you leave hospital chaplaincy?" And I said, "Oh, I just kept being around death all the time." And then I come to St. Thomas, first 2 years, 30 funerals. And I'm like, oh, well, but what lasts? I have seen what lasts. Love. Love. That is the pursuit. That is what can possess us, and that we can never go wrong. So let us seek kingdom treasure, that which does not fail, that can come from our heart. So when we can perceive this, trust it, life doesn't have to be fair or go our way before we walk the way of the kingdom. Amen.